Hey guys, tonight we're slipping through time into a cozy nightmare called the Middle Ages. Picture this: you wake up, stretch your arms, and immediately regret it. The straw beneath you rustles, releasing clouds of dust that tickle your nose and set off a sneezing fit. Fleas leap from their cozy homes onto your unprotected skin, eager for breakfast before you've even had yours. Welcome to your medieval bed, itchier than a wool sweater from Grandma's closet and far less charming. Honestly, you probably won't survive this, but hey, it's just history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing who's braving history's chaos with me tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first morning in the medieval world unfolds in all its unwashed glory. You blink the sleep from your eyes, but daylight barely filters through narrow gaps in the window shutters. No friendly alarm to gently coax you awake, just the grating crow of a rooster who seems to take personal pride in startling everyone awake at the worst possible moment. And trust me, the medieval rooster isn't your Disney-style bird. He sounds genuinely irritated by your existence. Yawning and scratching away the last of your sleep, you sit up and shudder slightly as your bare feet touch the chilly dirt floor. Yes, dirt. Carpets. Those won't become popular for another few hundred years. You make a mental note to appreciate modern flooring, because nothing makes you grateful for polished wood or carpet like stepping barefoot onto packed earth sprinkled with straw and mystery clumps best left unidentified. Stretching your limbs again, you immediately regret your enthusiasm. The straw-filled mattress beneath you is uneven, lumpy, and in desperate need of a fresh fill. Historically accurate fact: medieval mattresses were essentially sacks of coarse cloth stuffed loosely with straw, hay, or even moss. Historians still argue whether peasants replaced this filling regularly or just lived with the slowly accumulating ecosystem of mites, fleas, and mold. You, however, don't need a debate. You're feeling the itchy evidence firsthand. Trying to maintain dignity, you shuffle out of bed and shake off imaginary and, unfortunately, very real bugs. As you stand there swatting invisible creatures, you're suddenly aware of the distinct odor permeating your small, stuffy room. It's a pungent cocktail of dampness, wood smoke from last night's hearth, and the unmistakable tang of mildew. Candle wax drips from crude holders, and the walls are rough, plastered with uneven clay and straw. No Instagram-friendly minimalism here, just gritty authenticity that's far too authentic. You reach for your clothes, hung carelessly on wooden pegs hammered roughly into the wall. Spoiler alert, medieval wardrobe choices are limited and uncomfortable, but we'll unpack that nightmare soon enough. For now, you eye your rumpled tunic, skeptically trying not to think about how many days it's been since its last proper wash. Laundry Day, after all, is a major production in medieval times, involving hours of scrubbing in freezing river water with soap that's harsh enough to strip paint off a car if cars existed, of course. Outside, you hear the first stirrings of village life. Chickens fuss loudly, cows moo impatiently, and villagers greet each other with an alarming cheerfulness for this hour. Seriously, who's that happy at dawn without coffee? But Ah, yes, coffee doesn't exist in medieval Europe, yet truly a tragedy. Your morning beverage choices are limited to watered down ale or lukewarm water, neither of which screams rise and shine. Suddenly, a chill seeps through gaps in the wooden walls, and you pull your cloak tighter. Homes in this era weren't exactly insulated. The thin walls, made from wattle and daub or simple timber, do little to stop drafts from invading your personal space. You longingly imagine central heating and double-glazed windows, realizing just how much your modern comfort hinges on technology invented long after this miserable morning. Stepping outside briefly, you squint as the sun struggles to clear a hazy horizon. The street, really just a muddy path, bustles with peasants, already busy about their day. Children dash around barefoot and surprisingly cheerful despite the fact their playground is literally mud. Dogs, chickens, and pigs roam freely, adding layers of noise and chaos to an already overstimulating morning. Medieval livestock had a curious habit of being communal property, resulting in pigs snuffling happily through everyone's gardens, trampling vegetables, and causing general mayhem. The local lord occasionally tried enforcing rules about livestock containment, but those efforts typically ended as successful as medieval dental care, meaning not at all. You inhale the mixed aromas of dung-damp straw smoke and cooking fires. Ah, yes, medieval air freshener guaranteed to wake you faster than a cold shower ever could. No lavender diffusers or citrus-scented candles here, just the raw, unfiltered reality of rural medieval Europe. Yet despite everything the villagers around you carry on, with the normalcy of people used to such conditions, it's almost inspiring almost. A neighbor catches your eye and waves cheerfully. Clearly, medieval social skills surpass your own. You return an awkward smile, realizing that friendliness may be your best survival tool. Allies matter here in a world where community can mean the difference between getting through winter or succumbing to hunger and cold. You duck back inside your humble abode, mentally preparing yourself for the next round of medieval challenges. This first hour awake has taught you one critical lesson. Surviving medieval mornings is a triumph in itself, and you haven't even tackled breakfast yet. That dear friend will be its own special ordeal. Taking a deep breath and immediately regretting it due to the room's lingering odors, you decide it's best to simply embrace the discomfort. After all, your modern sensibilities aren't exactly helping you navigate this strange, itchy, pungent new life. You have no choice but to adapt, endure, and perhaps, if you're lucky, find humor in the absurdity of it all. Who knows? Maybe by tomorrow morning, you'll even stop flinching at flea bites. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You've survived your first hour, but medieval life has plenty more curveballs waiting to test your modern patience. Remember this moment, the feeling of waking up, itchy, uncomfortable, and bewildered. Because as bad as it seems now, things can and probably will get a whole lot worse before the day's end. You're about to discover exactly why people in medieval times rarely complained about boredom. They simply didn't have the energy. So gather your courage, brush off those fleas, and brace yourself. Breakfast and its delightful medieval horrors awaits. After surviving the morning flea fest, you reach hesitantly for your clothes, draped carelessly over crude wooden pegs hammered into your humble walls. You might imagine medieval fashion as flowing gowns, velvet cloaks, and stylish leather boots, After all, you've probably seen enough costume dramas to feel confident. But prepare yourself because reality is far less flattering and a whole lot itchier. First, your undergarments. Forget soft cotton or silky synthetics. Medieval underwear means coarse linen braids. Think oversized boxers or shorts cinched at the waist with rope. Comfort clearly wasn't a top priority. Historians still argue whether these scratchy garments protected modesty or merely provided another place for fleas to settle. You sigh, guessing probably both. Pulling on the braids, you wince as the fabric scratches your skin, simultaneously too tight and absurdly baggy in all the wrong places. Next comes your tunic, a shapeless sack of wool or linen hanging loosely past your knees. If you're wealthy, maybe it's dyed a fetching shade of dull green or faded yellow, but as a humble medieval villager, you're stuck with natural hues. Think varying shades of oatmeal and mud. Your tunic fits roughly crafted, without precision tailoring, designed purely for function, not fashion. Imagine wearing an oversized potato sack, only less stylish. A belt, usually a length of braided rope or cheap leather, keeps your shapeless garment from billowing too much and tripping you in the mud. Adjusting the rope, you try to give your outfit some structure, but quickly accept defeat. After all, medieval fashion wasn't about looks, it was about covering your body enough to keep judgmental neighbors and biting insects at bay. Over your tunic goes another layer, especially in colder months. A coarse woolen surcoat or cloak that's heavy scratchy and definitely not machine washable. If it rains, and spoiler alert, medieval Europe was notoriously damp, you'll soon discover your cloak absorbs water better than your kitchen sponge, turning heavy and soaking you to the bone. Waterproofing, that'll come much later with inventions far beyond your medieval reach. For now, just hope it doesn't rain or resign yourself to walking around feeling like a miserable sodden sheep. Your feet slide reluctantly into sturdy shoes made from thick leather, sewn roughly by the local cobbler. These shoes aren't left and right specific. Both are the same shape, designed with blunt practicality rather than comfort. If you're lucky, they've softened somewhat after years of wear molding vaguely to your feet, but more likely they're still stiff, causing blisters before you even step outside. And socks. If you're wealthy, perhaps you have knitted woolen hose, snugly tied at the knee, but you're a peasant. Remember, socks might be a luxury you simply don't have. Finally, your headwear necessary for both warmth and social expectation. Medieval people firmly believed in covering heads, possibly out of modesty, superstition, or simple practicality. Your headgear might be a plain woolen hood or a linen coif tied snugly beneath your chin. Fashionable hardly. Essential. Unfortunately, yes. Now dressed, or rather armored in these layers of itchy fabric, you stand awkwardly tugging and adjusting, desperate for some comfort. No mirrors exist to confirm your appearance, but perhaps that's a blessing. Confidence isn't boosted by seeing yourself dressed like a poorly stuffed scarecrow. Instead, you judge your look solely by comfort, which in this scenario is tragically low. Outside others, share your struggle. Everyone dresses similarly shapeless, layered, and desperately practical. If you're imagining romantic medieval costumes from movies, think again. Those beautiful gowns and elegant doublets belonged exclusively to nobility, the folks far removed from the daily toil of village life. You meanwhile share fashion tips, mostly with livestock. But medieval clothing wasn't merely uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Long tunics and trailing sleeves frequently snagged on fire hazards like cooking hearths or open flame torches. Historical records are filled with alarming references to clothing-related accidents, sometimes tragically fatal. You glance uneasily at the fire in your hearth, suddenly aware your everyday garments could very literally become a life-threatening hazard. Laundry day presents another daunting medieval challenge. Washing your clothes means lugging heavy baskets to the nearest stream, river, or communal washing area. Armed with harsh soap, often made from animal fat and ash, you scrub aggressively your fingers, growing numb in freezing water. Medieval detergent isn't gentle. It's abrasive, tough enough to remove grime, but equally tough on your skin. And drying your garments. Forget convenient dryers or even indoor racks. Wet clothing is spread out on bushes, rocks, or makeshift wooden frames, taking hours or days to dry, depending on the unpredictable weather. No wonder medieval folks rarely washed their clothes frequently. Hygiene was exhausting. Then there's fashion's darker side, sumptuary laws. Throughout medieval Europe, laws dictated what certain classes could or couldn't wear. These laws weren't subtle suggestions, they were strictly enforced. A peasant caught wearing colors or fabrics reserved for nobility could face harsh punishment, fines, imprisonment, or public humiliation. Imagine getting arrested because your cloak was accidentally dyed too brightly or embroidered too lavishly. You find yourself grateful your dull, itchy outfit offers no risk of arrest. Despite the discomfort, medieval clothing did have practical advantages. Wool and linen were durable, lasting years, or even decades with careful mending. Medieval folks frequently patched clothing, resulting in a patchwork of repairs, proudly worn as proof of thrift and resourcefulness. In fact, medieval clothing recycling put modern thrift stores to shame, with garments passed down through generations, endlessly repaired and repurposed until barely recognizable. Accessories existed too, though often equally uncomfortable. Leather belts and pouches carried necessities like knives, coins, or keys. A simple cloth apron protected clothing during daily chores, cooking, weaving, or gardening, but certainly didn't enhance style. Hats, gloves, and scarves were purely functional, worn solely for warmth rather than fashion. Jewelry, if you could afford it, was basic. Maybe a simple bronze brooch or a wooden pendant carved with symbolic designs. No glittering necklaces or dazzling rings, just humble tokens, often holding deep personal or spiritual significance. One quirky tidbit, medieval shoes, often featured elongated pointed toes called poulins or krakos. At their peak, these impractically stylish shoes extended absurdly, sometimes several inches beyond the foot. Historians still debate exactly why people adopted such impractical footwears, suggesting everything from fashion trends to symbolic status. Fortunately, these shoes rarely appeared in humble peasant wardrobes. They were strictly for wealthier folks who could afford impracticality. Adjusting your itchy layers. One last time, you step into the bustling medieval street, fully aware you'll spend today longing for comfortable jeans and soft cotton tees. But survival means adaptation, and your medieval neighbors navigate discomfort with impressive resilience. Perhaps in time you'll learn to tolerate these coarse fabrics, these uncomfortable shoes, and this endlessly scratchy clothing. Or perhaps you'll simply learn to appreciate your modern wardrobe more deeply once you return. For now, though, you trudge forward because the medieval day waits for no one. Next comes breakfast, and it promises to be just as uncomfortable as your itchy clothes. After all, medieval life isn't known for luxury, comfort, or convenience. It's raw, practical, and often painful, a world designed to test your modern patience at every turn. So straighten your itchy tunic, brace yourself against discomfort, and prepare for a breakfast that might just redefine your idea of culinary horror. Emerging from your home in itchy woolen armor, you stumble sleepily toward breakfast, already suspecting it won't be the cozy, comforting affair you crave. In your modern life, mornings meant steaming coffee, buttery toast, maybe some fluffy scrambled eggs if you felt ambitious. But medieval breakfast is a far cry from avocado toast or even a quick bowl of cereal. Here, breakfast is an exercise in compromised survival and culinary courage. Your stomach grumbles loudly, echoing your silent hope for something edible, but the options before you are limited. Medieval villagers. Historians still debate often ate just 2 main meals per day, one around mid-morning and another before sunset, leaving breakfast as a minor affair, almost an afterthought. You realize quickly that breakfast isn't so much enjoyed as it is endured. You glance down at your morning fare, laid haphazardly across a wooden plank that passes for your table. First there's bread, but before your imagination conjures visions of warm, fluffy loaves fresh from a bakery oven, let's set expectations straight. Medieval bread is dense, dark, and alarmingly tough. In fact, historians agree that villagers ate bread so coarse it contained bits of husk and grit grinding down teeth over time. With a resigned sigh, you tear into it, teeth straining against a crust more stubborn than a mule on market day. Your first bite proves a challenge. The bread's texture is somewhere between stale drywall and an old shoe sole, chewy, gritty, and utterly flavorless. Even worse, your bread might be days old, its freshness long gone. The idea of daily fresh baked loaves was a luxury reserved for those with ovens, wealth, or servants. You unfortunately have none of these, so you chew determinedly, hoping to keep your teeth intact. Of course, bread alone won't fuel your day. Your morning beverage intended to wash down the rough bread comes next. Coffee, sadly, is centuries away from arriving in Europe, so your options are starkly limited. Fresh water. Not unless you're feeling particularly brave or desperate. Medieval water often meant risking illness, sourced from questionable wells or streams where villagers bathed animals, drank, and laundry was scrubbed. Instead, you reach reluctantly for ale, weak, watery, and uncomfortably lukewarm. It might seem odd drinking beer first thing in the morning, but medieval ale wasn't quite the brew you'd enjoy today. It was low alcohol, more for hydration and sustenance than enjoyment. Even children drank it regularly, a safer alternative to water. As you sip tentatively, the weak ale coats your mouth with a mildly bitter tang, tasting faintly of grains and yeast. It's certainly not delicious, but it beats dehydration or dysentery, 2 medieval breakfast staples you'd prefer to avoid. Next to your ale, there might be a chunk of hardened cheese, possibly the one bright spot in your dismal breakfast. Medieval cheese varied widely in quality, flavor, and smell, from mild and crumbly to pungent and alarmingly ripe. Your chunk today is moderately edible, firm, tangy, and fortunately devoid of visible mold, though honestly, in medieval times, Moldy cheese wasn't necessarily rejected. You nibble cautiously grateful for something vaguely palatable. Then there's porridge. Porridge, often your medieval breakfast mainstay. But banish thoughts of creamy oats drizzled with honey and berries. Medieval porridge was usually made from grains like barley rye or oats boiled into a thick, gluey mush. Without sugar or spices, luxuries out of your reach, your porridge sits like lumpy paste, offering little more than warmth and calories. Sometimes, if you were lucky, villagers added scraps of vegetables or herbs for flavor. But today, your porridge is disappointingly plain seasoned generously with nothing. You bravely lift a spoonful to your mouth. It's bland, heavy, and sticks stubbornly to your teeth. You swallow hard, trying to appreciate its nutritional value, fiber, vitamins, and carbs to fuel your arduous day. But honestly, it's tough. Medieval breakfasts clearly weren't designed with taste in mind. If you're particularly unlucky today, might even feature salted fish common for villages near coasts or rivers. While seafood might sound appealing, medieval salted fish wasn't exactly fresh sushi. It was tough, pungent, and aggressively salty, preserved by drying or salting to the point of leather-like toughness. Chewing through this breakfast choice required determination, strong teeth, and possibly divine intervention. Fortunately today, your table remains fish-free, a small mercy. Meat, too, is rarely part of your breakfast routine. For medieval peasants, fresh meat was scarce, reserved mostly for holidays or feast days. Daily consumption of bacon, sausages, or ham wasn't common among villagers. Those luxuries belonged to the wealthy. You cast a longing glance toward your non-existent bacon and sigh wistfully. Clearly, being a medieval villager means embracing disappointment early and often. One curious medieval breakfast fact: villagers occasionally enjoyed something called frumenti, a pudding-like dish of cracked wheat boiled with milk eggs, and occasionally spices like cinnamon. However, spices were expensive, making frumenti more common at celebrations or harvest festivals than daily breakfast. Still, historians debate how widely enjoyed frumenti truly was, as ingredients like eggs and milk were often scarce. Today, your breakfast remains firmly porridge and ale, based with frumenti, a distant, delicious dream. Finally, you finish eating, your stomach vaguely full, but your appetite unsatisfied. Medieval breakfasts were notoriously pragmatic: quick calories, easy preparation, minimal fuss. Nobody lingered leisurely over morning meals, sipping tea, or planning the day, mostly because villagers had endless work, waiting chores demanding immediate attention. Breakfast wasn't a pleasant ritual. It was fuel to power exhausting labor. Clearing your dishes, you contemplate your day ahead, farming, animal care, weaving, blacksmithing. Whatever your medieval role, it promises physical hardship, requiring every calorie consumed. You glance reluctantly toward your remaining bread crusts and tepid ale, debating whether to force down a few more bites. After all, medieval life is unforgiving. Your next meal, uncertain, and hunger a constant threat. As you rise, stomach still grumbling, you remember your modern breakfast routines wistfully. Cereal boxes, pastries, even fast food breakfast sandwiches seem suddenly luxurious. Medieval breakfasts remind you harshly of your vulnerability. No fridge stocked with options, no grocery store down the street. Just coarse bread, weak ale, and nutritional compromise. Outside, your home villagers already bustle about, fueled by similar breakfasts. Children scurry, adults shout greetings, animals clamor. Medieval life waits impatiently, demanding action. Hunger or discomfort offer no excuses. Survival means pushing forward relentlessly. With a resigned breath, you brace yourself. Your morning breakfast might disappoint your taste buds, but your medieval day offers far greater challenges ahead. Work, labor, and hardship loom constantly waiting to test your endurance and resilience. But breakfast, even this sad, disappointing meal, is your essential start. Remember this moment, clearly sitting tiredly at a crude wooden table, chewing gritty bread, drinking bitter ale. Appreciate your modern breakfast deeply, because medieval mornings redefine culinary humility. If nothing else, your journey into medieval breakfasts might inspire newfound gratitude or simply a lasting distaste for porridge. But the day moves forward relentlessly. Breakfast is over, labor begins. Your medieval adventure, uncomfortable as ever, demands your attention. Brace yourself, because if breakfast challenged you, your workday promises even greater trials. And trust me, you're definitely going to miss your coffee. With breakfast's culinary disappointments behind you, bland porridge, gritty bread, and weak ale providing a questionable foundation, you step outside mentally bracing for the long, arduous day ahead. Welcome to medieval work, relentless, physical, and exhausting. Whatever role medieval life assigns you, be it farming, blacksmithing, weaving, or a dozen other gritty occupations, it promises to thoroughly test your modern endurance. Your first step onto the village path reveals a muddy, chaotic landscape bustling with purposeful activity. Farmers trudge toward fields, hoes and scythes slung over tired shoulders. Blacksmiths kindle forges, stoking hot embers to life. Weavers sit hunched over looms, fingers already numb from repetitive motion. There's no leisurely commute, no gentle easing into tasks. Medieval mornings thrust you directly into relentless action. If farming is your medieval calling, and statistically it likely is, your workday begins just after sunrise and ends long after sunset. Fields stretch outward, their rough furrows waiting impatiently for attention. You grip your hoe tightly, its handle worn smooth by endless use, and begin the back-breaking process of turning soil. The earth beneath your feet is stubborn, rocky, and thick with clay. Every swing of your hoe sends vibrations through your arms, shoulders aching in minutes rather than hours. Medieval farming methods offer little respite. No tractors, plows, or power tools here. Just muscle, stubborn determination, and sheer willpower. Mid-morning arrives slowly, marked by the sun inching upward in a hazy sky. Sweat drips steadily down your face and neck, mixing uncomfortably with dirt. Your tunic sticks damply to your skin, adding to your general discomfort. Historians frequently debate how villagers managed intense physical labor without modern conveniences. Standing knee-deep in muddy soil, you have your answer: they simply pushed forward because survival left no choice. Nearby, a fellow villager guides an ox dragging a heavy wooden plow through compacted earth. Medieval plows weren't efficient, steel-bladed marvels. These wooden implements required tremendous effort, barely scratching the soil's surface. Animals, too, grew exhausted quickly, requiring careful management and rest periods. You watch, sympathetically grateful that at least your tool isn't stubbornly alive and capable of protest. Occasionally, you straighten your back, Glancing toward the forest's edge, clearing fields for planting meant removing rocks, stumps, and debris physically demanding tasks with only primitive tools. Trees were felled painstakingly by axes, wielded tirelessly, their wood repurposed into fences, carts, and building material. Nothing was wasted. Every resource mattered in medieval village life. As the morning passes, your muscles protest loudly, unfamiliar with relentless physical strain. No ergonomic comfort, no scheduled breaks. Medieval labor demands endurance beyond your modern sensibilities. You realize quickly that medieval villagers, your ancestors, were astonishingly resilient, hardened by constant exertion. Modern comforts seem impossibly distant as you push through pain and fatigue. If farming doesn't claim your medieval day, perhaps blacksmithing or weaving awaits instead occupations equally demanding. At the village, smithy heat radiates fiercely from roaring fires, stinging your eyes and singeing eyebrows. Hammering molten iron demands precise strength and timing muscles trembling with each swing. Sparks fly alarmingly, and accidental burns occur frequently, a constant painful reminder of medieval workplace safety standards. Weaving, though less immediately hazardous, tests patience and precision. Sitting hunched over a loom, your fingers thread yarn endlessly through complicated patterns. Eyes blur, backs ache, and hands stiffen from repetitive motion. Medieval weavers often developed joint problems, historians note, yet continued working tirelessly to produce essential fabric. There were no shortcuts, no relief, just monotonous dedication. By midday, your stomach rumbles, signaling hunger that your sparse breakfast failed to fully satisfy. Villagers paused briefly around noon for a modest meal, often bread, cheese, and ale, again hardly an enticing prospect. Yet even this minimal break feels blissful, offering temporary relief from relentless labor. Gathering with others, you exchange tired nods, sharing the unspoken camaraderie of exhausted workers everywhere. After your short respite, work resumes with grim inevitability. Tasks shift, but intensity remains constant. If you're lucky, you might spend afternoons tending livestock, cows, pigs, chickens, tasks seemingly lighter than farming or smithing. Yet livestock care, too, offers its challenges. Animals demand feeding, grooming, and careful supervision. Historians describe medieval animal husbandry as rigorous, crucial work where negligence could lead to lost livestock and lost survival opportunities. One quirky medieval occupation worth noting: fuller's workers who processed woolen cloth using urine collected from public latrines. Yes, you heard correctly, urine. Medieval villagers collected human waste because ammonia naturally softened wool fibers, improving cloth quality. Historians still debate the fuller's popularity within communities, considering their unique and frankly unpleasant methods. You silently thank medieval fate for assigning you farming instead, exhausting, yes, but certainly preferable to processing wool with buckets of human waste. Throughout your medieval workday, neighbors constantly surround you. Community labor was essential for survival, as tasks often required collaborative effort, harvesting crops, building fences, repairing roofs. Shared labor created strong social bonds, reinforcing village solidarity. Modern individualism didn't exist here. Cooperation defined medieval survival strategies. As the sun begins its slow descent, you glance toward the horizon with exhausted relief. The day's physical demands have drained your energy completely, muscles aching profoundly. Yet medieval workers rarely complained openly, their stoicism shaped by necessity and expectation. Life offered few alternatives. Work hard, endure pain, survive another day. Heading homeward, you pause briefly to observe your village's collective exhaustion. Farmers trudge home, heads bowed tiredly. Blacksmiths extinguish forge fires, soot streaking their faces. Weavers rub stiff fingers, sighing wearily. Medieval workdays didn't end cleanly at designated hours. Labor continued until tasks concluded or daylight faded. Schedules remained fluid, dictated solely by necessity. Arriving home, you collapse gratefully onto a rough wooden bench, grateful simply to rest. Medieval villagers often continued work indoors, mending clothes, preparing evening meals, sharpening tools. Even at home, labor persisted subtly woven seamlessly into daily existence. No Netflix binges, leisurely scrolling, or relaxing hot showers awaited you, just quieter indoor chores. Yet despite fatigue, pride emerges slowly. Pride in surviving medieval work's intensity, pride in contributing meaningfully to village survival. Every furrow dug, every hammer strike, every woven thread held tangible significance. Medieval labor wasn't abstract. It directly influenced community survival. You, despite modern discomfort, now shared that meaningful effort. Sitting quietly, your mind briefly wanders toward your modern job, recognizing suddenly its comparative ease, comfortable chairs, scheduled breaks, coffee machines. Medieval work's harshness highlights modern employment's comforts, starkly perhaps inspiring deeper appreciation. Or perhaps simply triggering exhaustion-induced nostalgia for office air conditioning. Finally, as darkness fully descends, you prepare reluctantly for sleep, knowing tomorrow demands equally intense effort. Medieval work never ceased. It cycled endlessly, requiring relentless endurance. Tonight you'll sleep heavily, muscles grateful for rest, mind dreading morning's inevitable call. Yet your newfound appreciation for medieval resilience lingers quietly, whispering gently of shared human determination across centuries. Tomorrow's challenges await patiently, another day of relentless medieval labor, another test of your modern endurance. For now, though, rest deeply grateful for surviving another medieval trial. You've earned this respite, temporary as it may be. Tomorrow's labor looms ominously, but tonight at least exhaustion offers peace. After your grueling workday, collapsing onto your rough wooden bench feels heavenly, even if it's a heaven filled with splinters and questionable hygiene. And speaking of hygiene, brace yourself. Medieval cleanliness is not for the faint-hearted, and tonight's routine might have you longing desperately for your modern bathroom, complete with fluffy towels and lavender-scented soap. Firstly, let's confront the harsh truth about medieval bathing habits, or rather the lack thereof. Unlike your daily hot shower or relaxing evening bath, medieval bathing was sporadic at best. Historians still argue about exactly how often medieval villagers washed, but most agree it was far from a daily occurrence. Frequent bathing, in fact, was considered suspicious, even dangerous by some medieval thinkers. Popular belief held that opening your pores with warm water invited illness into your body. So bathing regularly was often avoided, making you wonder how anyone survived medieval summers without offending their neighbors or themselves. Still, medieval villagers did bathe occasionally, typically in wooden tubs filled painstakingly with water heated bucket by bucket over the hearth. Your bathing water wasn't pristine. Cleanliness depended entirely on your position in the family bathing order. Fathers bathed first, then mothers, then children in descending age. By your turn, the water was often cloudy, tepid, and shared with who knows what. Imagine soaking tired muscles, not in fresh bubbles, but in lukewarm broth seasoned with family dirt. You cringe internally, suddenly grateful your modern bathtub has a drain. Medieval soap, when available, wasn't luxurious or gentle. Forget scented bars or moisturizing body washes. Medieval soap was harsh homemade and aggressively basic, literally made from animal fats and wood ashes, creating a gritty, lye-rich concoction. Its texture ranged from crumbly to slimy, and it stripped skin of oils and dirt equally efficiently. After scrubbing yourself, your skin felt dry tight and faintly irritated, hardly the refreshing cleanliness you'd hoped for. Even worse, historians note that soap's scarcity meant villagers frequently used it sparingly, further complicating your medieval hygiene nightmare. Hair care presented another daunting medieval challenge. Shampoo conditioner. They simply didn't exist. Instead, hair was occasionally washed using mixtures of vinegar, rosemary, or other herbs' natural ingredients, providing slight cleansing without luxurious suds or softness. Your scalp likely remained itchy, your hair greasy, or tangled with lice, an ever-present threat. Medieval combs crafted from bone or wood helped somewhat, but daily grooming was far from pleasant. Tonight, combing your hair feels more like a battle-tangled strands, tugging painfully, reminding you vividly why medieval hairstyles remained simple and functional. Tooth care offers another uncomfortable reality. Toothbrushes were non-existent, replaced by rough linen cloth rubbed vigorously against teeth. Sometimes, abrasive pastes of salt-ground charcoal or powdered herbs provided minimal freshness, but rarely true cleanliness. Chewing sticks to twigs frayed into makeshift brushes also served as crude dental tools. Still cavities, toothaches, and decay remained rampant problems exacerbated by gritty bread and minimal hygiene. Tonight, scrubbing teeth with coarse fabric and gritty paste, you long desperately for minty toothpaste and a modern brush. Medieval breath, historians suggest, was likely a constant challenge, politely ignored by villagers simply accustomed to universal discomfort. But perhaps most alarming of medieval hygiene rituals were the bathroom facilities or their shocking absence. Medieval homes lacked private toilets. Villagers used communal latrines, privies, or simply fields outside the village boundaries. Nighttime bathroom trips meant stumbling through darkness, wary of stepping into unexpected gifts left by neighbors or livestock. Privies were often simple wooden seats placed over pits, dark, smelly, and notoriously unhygienic. No flushing water or ventilation, just odor flies and discomfort. You grit your teeth, promising to deeply appreciate modern plumbing upon your return to civilization. Even worse, medieval toilet paper didn't exist. Instead, villagers relied on whatever was conveniently available: leaves, moss, straw, scraps of fabric, or even hands washed later in questionable water. Sanitation was rudimentary, and infections were alarmingly common. Historians frequently note medieval diseases spread rapidly, partly due to these unsanitary habits. Tonight, facing the harsh reality of medieval bathroom practices, you desperately miss the gentle luxury of soft two-ply toilet paper possibly mankind's greatest invention. Women faced additional hygiene challenges during menstruation. Without modern feminine products, women relied on simple cloth pads, washed and reused monthly. Comfort wasn't prioritized. Practicality was everything. Modern historians often marvel at medieval women's quiet resilience, navigating monthly discomfort with minimal fuss or complaint. Tonight, facing your medieval hygiene challenges, you share newfound respect for their silent strength and adaptability. One quirky medieval hygiene tidbit: villagers frequently believed cleanliness correlated directly with moral virtue. Medieval religious teachings emphasized spiritual purity over physical cleanliness, suggesting excessive grooming was vanity, even sinful. Bathing habits were shaped by religion, superstition, and practicality rather than simple personal comfort. Historians still debate how widely these teachings impacted daily hygiene, but clearly medieval attitudes toward cleanliness were deeply complex and occasionally contradictory. Your clothing, too, contributes significantly to medieval hygiene discomfort. Without regular laundry days, clothes quickly accumulated dirt, sweat, and odors. Garments were worn repeatedly until visibly filthy, only then washed in freezing rivers or communal basins. Today, historians note medieval villagers accepted clothing's visible stains as unavoidable practicality, winning over vanity. Tonight, pulling your itchy tunic back onto freshly scrubbed skin, you sigh wearily, accepting clothing's discomfort as another unavoidable medieval hardship. Despite medieval hygiene's uncomfortable realities, certain practices were surprisingly effective. Herbal remedies lavender, rosemary, sage provided natural antibacterial properties, combating odors and germs subtly. Medieval villagers frequently relied on herbal sachets tucked discreetly into clothing or bedding their aromatic scents, offering subtle freshness amidst widespread unpleasantness. Tonight, you gratefully inhale lavender sachets, recognizing small mercies amidst medieval discomfort. Stepping back inside your home, you quickly realize medieval interiors further complicated hygiene. Floors were dirt or straw-covered, capturing dust, food scraps, animal droppings, and assorted filth. Regular sweeping was essential, yet limited by rudimentary tools, bundled twigs, or coarse brooms. Surfaces were rarely scrubbed thoroughly, with villagers simply accustomed to constant grime. Tonight, you grimace, sweeping ineffectually at dirt-packed corners, longing desperately for modern disinfectants. Yet despite tonight's overwhelming discomfort, medieval villagers adapted remarkably. Their resilience amidst hygiene hardships was genuinely astonishing, their adaptability quietly impressive. You marvel briefly at humanity's persistent survival instincts, accepting harsh realities simply because alternatives remained non-existent. Tonight's hygiene struggles feel profound, highlighting medieval villagers' astonishing adaptability and your own questionable resilience. Finally, after exhausting hygiene rituals, you collapse wearily onto your rough bed, deeply grateful for its simple comfort. Despite itchy bedding and questionable cleanliness, tonight's sleep feels well-earned, your body exhausted by medieval discomfort. Tomorrow's hygiene challenges loom ominously, but tonight, sleep offers merciful respite. Your journey through medieval hygiene rituals teaches newfound gratitude for modern comforts, luxuries previously overlooked, now profoundly appreciated. Tomorrow awaits patiently, promising continued discomfort, clothing, bathing, dental care, and bathroom practices. Medieval hygiene remains relentless, unforgiving, but tonight's challenges are conquered, your resilience quietly proven. Sleep deeply grateful, tonight's discomfort finally fades into restful darkness. Tomorrow's trials wait patiently, but tonight you've earned peaceful, well-deserved rest. Just when you thought medieval life couldn't get more uncomfortable, you awaken with a familiar ache deep in your chest and a pounding headache behind your eyes. Illness has found you, and unfortunately, medieval medicine awaits. If you thought breakfast was rough or hygiene questionable, brace yourself. Your journey into medieval medical practices is about to redefine discomfort entirely. First, you hesitate to even admit your sickness. In medieval villages, falling ill wasn't just inconvenient, it was potentially devastating. Without modern antibiotics or effective treatments, minor illnesses could quickly escalate into life-threatening conditions. Colds and coughs easily turned to pneumonia. Small cuts quickly became infected. Medieval medicine operated on a combination of guesswork, superstition, and pure desperation, a mix that rarely inspired confidence. Your neighbor, noticing your pale, drawn face and persistent cough, shakes her head sympathetically and advises you to visit the local healer. Reluctantly, you agree, your body aching miserably as you stumble toward the village healer's humble cottage. Medieval healers varied widely in skill, knowledge, and methods, some genuinely helpful, others alarmingly misguided. Historians still debate their effectiveness, but today your survival depends entirely on their questionable expertise. The healer greets you warmly, then promptly examines your symptoms by looking at your tongue, feeling your pulse, and inspecting your complexion carefully. Medieval medicine was deeply influenced by humoral theory, the belief that four bodily humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, dictated health. Your sickness meant your humors were unbalanced, requiring immediate intervention, usually involving uncomfortable treatments designed to restore equilibrium. Unfortunately for you, the healer decides bloodletting is essential. Bloodletting was alarmingly common, intended to purge excess humors from your body. Historians note bloodletting frequently weakened patients further, yet medieval healers embraced it enthusiastically. You grimace nervously watching the healer sharpen a small blade, a lancet carefully preparing to drain blood from your arm. As the lancet pierces your skin, you inhale sharply, desperately, hoping medieval medical theories aren't entirely misguided. Afterward, feeling faint and weakened, the healer reassures you cheerfully that losing blood is beneficial. You nod weakly, unconvinced, but too exhausted to argue. Bloodletting, historians explain, persisted despite questionable outcomes, because patients occasionally felt brief relief, often from simple blood pressure reduction. Tonight, though, your primary relief comes from knowing the procedure is finally finished. But bloodletting is just the beginning. The healer next prescribes leeches, yes, actual leeches, to further balance your humors. Medieval healers believed leeches drew out impure blood, gently restoring health subtly. Today, historians acknowledge leeches occasionally helped certain conditions by reducing swelling or improving circulation. Modern medicine even uses them selectively, but medieval overuse often weakened patients severely. You sit miserably, leeches attached to your skin, silently praying their slimy efforts are somehow beneficial. Next, herbal remedies appear. Medieval healers frequently utilized plants like mint chamomile garlic and sage, recognizing their natural antibacterial or anti-inflammatory properties. You sip warm herbal tea, gratefully feeling temporary relief as its warmth soothes your sore throat. Historians credit medieval herbalists' genuine knowledge, acknowledging their treatments sometimes offered real relief. Tonight, your herbal tea feels genuinely comforting, small mercy amidst otherwise miserable treatments. Astrology also heavily influenced medieval medicine healers, consulting star charts or lunar phases before administering treatments. Historians still debate astrology's practical impact, but medieval villagers deeply believed cosmic alignment dictated health outcomes. Your healer explains earnestly that tonight's lunar phase ensures optimal recovery conditions. You nod politely, unsure whether to believe astronomy or dismiss it entirely. Either way, medieval medicine blends scientific observation with genuine superstition. Tonight you experience both intimately. The healer then offers another alarming remedy, a poultice of cow dung mixed with herbs applied directly onto your chest. Medieval healers genuinely prescribed animal dung for various ailments, believing its warmth and natural compounds relieved symptoms. You hesitate desperately, your modern sensibilities screaming protest, but survival demands compliance. Tonight, historians' notes about dung-based remedies transform from quirky tidbits into your miserable reality. You brace yourself as the healer applies the warm, foul-smelling mixture, fighting nausea as odors overwhelm your senses. Medieval villagers frequently tolerated bizarre treatments, quietly their desperation outweighing disgust. Tonight, you join their ranks, reluctantly, silently promising profound gratitude for modern medicine upon your return home. Yet, despite medieval medicine's alarming treatments, occasional successes occurred. Broken bones were effectively splinted wounds, carefully cleaned with wine or vinegar to prevent infection. Medieval healers weren't entirely misguided. Practical experience occasionally produced genuine knowledge. Historians acknowledge medieval medicine's curious blend of genuine insight and harmful superstition, noting treatments occasionally succeeded, though rarely comfortably. One quirky medieval medical belief, using powdered mummy, literally ground Egyptian mummy as medicine. Imported from Egypt, mummy powder supposedly cured various ailments, from headaches to stomach troubles. Medieval healers eagerly prescribed mummy powder, despite its questionable origins, demonstrating desperation's alarming extremes. Fortunately, tonight's healer lacks mummy powder small mercy amid otherwise horrifying treatments. Finally exhausted from medieval medicine's rigorous interventions, you stumble homeward weak but hopeful. Medieval villagers often faced illness with quiet resignation, accepting questionable treatments simply because alternatives didn't exist. Tonight you share their reluctant acceptance, recognizing medieval medicine's discomfort and desperation intimately. At home, you sip more herbal tea, gratefully herbs, providing gentle comfort amidst lingering nausea and weakness. Medieval remedies rarely cured instantly recovery, slow and uncertain, but tonight herbs offer gentle relief, reminding you subtly that medieval villagers weren't entirely helpless. Their quiet adaptability amidst discomfort remains impressive, highlighting resilience's universal presence throughout human history. You collapse wearily onto your bed, medieval medical interventions draining your strength profoundly. Tomorrow's recovery remains uncertain, your health precariously balanced between questionable treatments and genuine relief. Yet tonight, gratitude emerges slowly. Gratitude for survival, gratitude for medieval healers' earnest efforts, gratitude for historians documenting these alarming practices, ensuring modern appreciation deepens profoundly. Tomorrow awaits patiently promising continued discomfort, perhaps lingering illness, further treatments, uncertain recovery. Medieval medicine offers no guarantees, just endless desperation blended with cautious hope. Yet tonight, rest deeply grateful, medieval medicine's discomfort fades temporarily into restful darkness. Tomorrow's trials wait ominously, but tonight, peaceful respite offers quiet reassurance amidst historical discomfort. Sleep now knowing medieval medicine tested your resilience thoroughly, but survival prevailed, your strength quietly proven. Sweet dreams, brave traveler, tomorrow's medieval challenges await, but tonight rest gently in historical gratitude. As your strength slowly returns from yesterday's medieval medical misadventures, you might find yourself craving something more comforting than bloodletting or dung poultices, perhaps the gentle warmth of romance. Unfortunately, medieval love is not the whimsical romantic fairy tale you've probably imagined. Instead, it's more about property politics and practicality, less happily ever after, and more well, at least we're surviving. Stepping outside your humble home, you catch glimpses of village couples going about their day, husbands and wives, sharing chores in quiet harmony, neighbors gossiping cheerfully about the latest village romance or scandal. It all seems deceptively simple, even charming. But beneath this idyllic surface, medieval relationships are tangled webs of family obligations, economic considerations, and societal expectations that would make even the most pragmatic modern relationship seem positively romantic by comparison. Firstly, courtship, if you can even call it that, is often brief, awkward, and heavily supervised. Forget candlelit dinners or romantic strolls in moonlit gardens. Medieval dating involved more practical concerns. Families typically arranged marriages to strengthen social ties, gain property, or secure economic stability. Love, if it occurred, was an afterthought, an unexpected bonus, rather than a goal. Your romantic prospects depended heavily on your social status. If you're a peasant, and let's face it, you probably are, your choices are severely limited. Marriage decisions are usually made by your parents, relatives, or even your village community. The process is straightforward, yet deeply transactional. You marry someone roughly your age within your village or a neighboring community to ensure mutual survival. Practicality reigns supreme. Romantic compatibility is rarely considered. Love medieval villagers believed would grow eventually or not. Historians still debate whether genuine romantic affection was common among medieval peasant marriages, given their pragmatic origins. The wealthy, meanwhile, faced equally transactional relationships, albeit on a grander scale. Noble marriages were meticulously arranged, often negotiated for years, involving complicated dowries, political alliances, and property exchanges. Couples frequently married without ever having met their union, more contractual obligation than romantic choice. Medieval noblewomen were particularly vulnerable, their marriage decisions often determined entirely by fathers or brothers seeking strategic advantages. Romance historians suggest was a luxury rarely afforded to medieval nobility. ironic given the romanticized stories later generations would weave about them. If your medieval self hoped for romantic affection, patience, and a certain resignation were essential, medieval notions of love differed significantly from modern ideals. Romance, when depicted in medieval literature or songs, often focused on courtly love, extravagant, passionate declarations between knights and ladies, usually unattainable and often forbidden. Real medieval villagers rarely experienced such poetic intensity. Instead, they quietly navigated daily companionship, sharing chores, responsibilities, and burdens without fanfare. Genuine affection might eventually grow rooted more in mutual respect and cooperation than passionate romance. Yet even practical medieval relationships featured small gestures of affection. Men and women exchanged simple tokens, flowers, small handmade gifts, personal mementos, as quiet demonstrations of care. Medieval letters occasionally contained genuine expressions of affection written carefully by those literate enough to express their feelings. These quiet tokens, historians note, were rare but meaningful, demonstrating affection subtly amidst overwhelmingly practical concerns. Medieval weddings, meanwhile, offered brief moments of celebration and communal joy amidst daily hardship. Weddings were village affairs, with neighbors gathering to witness vows, share simple feasts, and participate in traditional celebrations. Festivities were modest, but genuinely heartfelt, dancing, feasting, music, and merriment, briefly overshadowing daily struggles. Tonight, as you watch a village couple exchange shy, hopeful vows beneath a flowering tree, you glimpse genuine happiness, even if it remains tempered by practicality. Yet medieval marriage also came with significant responsibilities. Couples were expected to produce children, quickly ensuring lineage continuation and family survival. Fertility was paramount. Childlessness was deeply stigmatized, often blamed unfairly on women. Medieval pregnancy and childbirth, historians emphasize, were dangerous and difficult, mortality rates alarmingly high. Love, even affection, frequently mingled with anxiety and dread, recognizing childbirth's genuine risks. Despite marriage's transactional origins, medieval villagers often remained faithfully committed to their partners. Divorce was rare, generally discouraged by the church, though annulments occasionally occurred, often for political or economic convenience among nobility. Peasant couples, meanwhile, quietly endured marital hardships, recognizing separation's impracticality. Marriage represented economic stability, and community belonging separation was simply unrealistic. Tonight, observing village couples quietly sharing evening chores, you sense deep resilience and commitment, recognizing their quiet dedication amidst adversity. Medieval relationships also faced significant challenges. Infidelity occurred, historians acknowledge, though, discreetly handled to avoid village scandal. Domestic disputes arose frequently, often resolved quietly by family elders or community leaders. Medieval couples navigated marital conflicts privately, rarely publicly acknowledging disagreements. Survival required cooperation and compromise. Medieval marriages weren't romantic idols, but practical partnerships quietly enduring daily life's relentless hardships. One quirky medieval relationship, tidbit love potions and charms, were widely believed effective villagers secretly seeking supernatural assistance for romantic challenges. Medieval herbals detailed elaborate recipes for love potions, often containing herbs like rosemary, lavender, or violets. Historians note villagers genuinely believed these charms held power, demonstrating medieval superstition's powerful influence, even within relationships. Tonight, overhearing village gossip about a neighbor's suspiciously affectionate husband, you suspect secret love potion, involvement medieval romance's curious quirkiness, quietly evident. Despite medieval relationships' practical constraints, genuine affection occasionally blossomed quietly rooted in shared experiences and mutual support. Medieval couples rarely displayed affection publicly. Instead, love emerged subtly demonstrated through cooperation, loyalty, quiet companionship. Historians frequently acknowledge medieval marriage's quiet resilience, rooted deeply in practicality, yet occasionally illuminated by genuine tenderness. Tonight, as darkness falls gently over your village, you reflect thoughtfully on medieval relationships' quiet complexities. Romance here isn't flashy gestures or passionate declarations. Instead, it's quiet endurance, practical compromise, subtle affection shared privately. Medieval villagers navigated relationships pragmatically, their quiet adaptability impressive amidst overwhelming hardship. Returning homeward, you consider medieval relationships, quiet lessons, practicality, endurance, subtle affection, quietly emerging amidst daily hardship. Tomorrow awaits patiently promising continued relationship complexities, transactional marriages, practical companionship, quiet affection subtly demonstrated. Medieval relationships offer no simple fairy tales, just quiet realities rooted deeply in survival and practicality. Yet tonight, rest deeply grateful medieval relationships' quiet lessons deepen modern appreciation profoundly. Tomorrow's relationship complexities await, but tonight sleep gently in historical gratitude. Medieval love quietly redefined your understanding profoundly. Romance rooted deeply in survival practicality and subtle affection, emerging quietly amidst daily hardship. Sweet dreams, thoughtful traveler, tomorrow's medieval challenges await patiently, but tonight, rest gently in historical reflection, medieval love's quiet complexities, enriching your understanding profoundly. You're just beginning to accept the quiet routines of medieval village life, itchy tunics, porridge practical marriages when something unexpected happens. A distant bell tolls, villagers hush, the air grows tense. Two men are dragged toward the center of the village square, flanked by grim-faced guards. You follow the crowd, heart tightening as your next lesson arrives. Uninvited medieval justice is swift, brutal, and deeply unsettling. Forget modern legal rights. There are no lawyers here, no Miranda warnings, no gentle invitations to remain silent. Medieval justice is rooted in public spectacle and divine judgment. Guilt isn't proven through forensic evidence or cross-examination. It's demonstrated sometimes literally by fire and water. The villagers gather tightly around the accused one, charged with stealing a chicken, the other suspected of sorcery. You might think stealing poultry would warrant a slap on the wrist, or maybe a short stint in the stocks. Instead, the village reeve reads a hastily scribbled proclamation, and the chicken thief is sentenced to trial by ordeal. Specifically, ordeal by boiling water. Historians still argue whether these ordeals were truly meant to determine guilt or simply terrify villagers into obedience. Either way, the logic is cruel. The accused must plunge his hand into a cauldron of boiling water and retrieve a stone. The wound is then wrapped for 3 days. If it heals cleanly, God has declared the man innocent. If it festers, which of course it almost always does, he is guilty. You wince as the man lips, trembling, obediently dunks his hand into the bubbling water. The crowd murmurs. The smell of burned flesh rises into the morning air. You want to look away, but you can't. Medieval justice isn't just about punishment, it's about demonstration. Everyone must see, everyone must remember. Crime equals pain. The second man accused of sorcery receives a different ordeal trial by water. He is bound and lowered into the village pond. The logic, if it can be called, that goes like this: water symbolizing purity will reject the guilty. If the accused floats, he is guilty. If he sinks, he is innocent, but may drown. It's a lose-lose situation with a theological twist. The man splashes, struggles, floats awkwardly guilty. The villagers exchange nervous glances. The sentence will be carried out tomorrow. Punishment varies by region and by social class. Nobles can often buy their way out of trouble. A peasant, not so lucky. For minor offenses, stocks or pillories are common. You'll be locked in wooden restraints in the village center, left for hours or even days, while your neighbors throw spoiled food, shout insults, or worse. Public shaming is a favorite medieval pastime. It's entertainment disguised as morality enforcement. Worse crimes like murder, heresy, or persistent theft call for harsher fates. Hanging is common, often conducted in a public square, with the crowd encouraged to attend. Drawing and quartering for truly serious cases, like treason, is a grim spectacle, dragged by horse hanged until nearly dead, then disemboweled, and, well, let's not get too graphic. PG-13, remember. But trust me, it's not the kind of thing you sleep through. Even corporal punishment, whippings, branding, mutilation, serves less to rehabilitate and more to mark. A branded thief with a hot iron T on his hand or forehead carries his crime for life. One quirky tidbit: some villagers believed a clever enough thief could remove the brand using vinegar and raw onion. Historians still debate whether this worked or just made everyone smell weird. Justice isn't always doled out by official authorities either. Villages sometimes act as one. Mob justice, often triggered by fear or rumor, erupts spontaneously. A woman with herbal knowledge. A child who says she saw a neighbor talking to the wind. Accusations of witchcraft can escalate quickly. You've seen the kindling piled at the edge of the square. You hope it's for winter, not something worse. Trials often involve confession, but not the voluntary kind. Torture is legal and enthusiastically used. The rack, the thumbscrew, the iron boot. These aren't myths, they're everyday tools of the trade. The theory is simple: the body reveals what the mouth hides. If you confess under duress, well, that's just proof of your guilt. It's twisted logic, and you're terrified just hearing the screams echoing from the keep. Yet medieval justice isn't entirely lawless. There is a system village, reeves, manorial courts, traveling justiciars. Records are kept, however messily. Some crimes even go unpunished when villagers vouch for the accused. Community reputation matters enormously. If 5 respectable neighbors say you're innocent, you might walk free. But if you've made enemies gossiped, flirted inappropriately borrowed grain, and forgot to return it, your fate can turn quickly. Ironically, the church often provides the fairest trials if you're lucky enough to be judged in an ecclesiastical court. There, the punishment might be a pilgrimage, a fine or penance like fasting and prayer. But again, this privilege mostly belongs to clergy, or those who can convincingly read Latin Bible verses aloud to claim benefit of clergy. If you can't, good luck. Night falls. The man who floated in the pond today will be punished tomorrow. The chicken thief's bandages will be unwrapped. You return home with a heavy heart, realizing that fear is just as much a tool of law here as truth. Justice in this world is more about power and perception than fairness. You lie in bed, stomach churning. You've made no crime today, but what about tomorrow? What if someone dislikes your face? What if you cough too oddly and someone suspects plague? What if your herbal tea makes someone believe you're a witch? Justice in the Middle Ages doesn't sleep. It watches waits and reminds you daily survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying in line. Just when your nerves begin to settle from witnessing medieval justice in all its horrifying glory, a faint scratching sound in the thatch above your bed snaps you back to full alertness. You freeze, ears straining. There it is again, skittering, scraping a soft chitter. And then you feel it, a tiny tickle on your arm. Congratulations. You've just met the real rulers of the Middle Ages rats, fleas, and the multitude of pestilent companions who live not beside humans, but on them. And spoiler alert, they're not here for friendship. They're here for blood food scraps and the occasional disease transmission. You slap instinctively, brushing off what you desperately hope is a flea. But deep down, you already know. Fleas are everywhere. In your bedding, in your clothes, in your neighbor's beard, in the straw-stuffed mattress that seemed so innocent on your first night here. You're part of the ecosystem now, and it's not a kind one. Historians agree that medieval living conditions created a paradise for parasites. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, and mice flourished in straw bedding, unwashed clothing, and thatched roofs. Your home might look quaint from the outside, but inside it's a microcosm of biological warfare. Everyone's scratching, no one's judging. It's just part of life. You sit up, examining your bites, small red and already itchy. Flea bites don't seem like much until you remember that fleas are more than just irritating. They're tiny biological weapons. These are the same fleas that famously carried Yersinia pestis, the bacteria responsible for the Black Death. And in your timeline, the plague isn't a distant memory. It's a real, terrifying threat, just one bite away. You pull your cloak tighter around your legs and glance warily at the shadows. Rats scurry along roof beams, squeaking softly. One pauses to sniff the air, nose twitching. Medieval rats weren't just disgusting, they were prolific, agile, and deeply intertwined with human life. Garbage wasn't carted off by sanitation trucks. It was thrown into the street. Latrines were rarely sealed. Food was stored poorly. In short, the buffet was always open, and the rats, they brought guests fleas. These weren't your average lazy house fleas. These were aggressive, bloodthirsty, high-speed pests with one mission: feed and spread. A single infected flea could change an entire village's fate in a matter of days. You might think the plague is a one-time event, a tragic moment in history already past. But no, during the Middle Ages, the Black Death wasn't a single outbreak. It returned in waves again and again for centuries. Sometimes it burned through whole regions. Sometimes it smoldered in the background. but it was always possible, always present. Historians still argue whether rural areas like yours fared better or worse. Some say isolation helped, others say lack of knowledge made outbreaks even deadlier. And it wasn't just the plague. Medieval life was a breeding ground for all kinds of diseases: typhus, leprosy, tuberculosis, dysentery, you name it. With no germ theory, no soap dispensers, no hand sanitizer, and no understanding of vectors illness spread like wildfire. You glance toward the village healer's cottage. Last week, someone came down with swollen lymph nodes and fever. Now their home is shuttered. A black cross hastily painted on the door. No one goes near. The family inside might already be dead or dying. You don't ask. Fear clings to the village like fog. People whisper of curses of angry spirits, of divine punishment. There are no microscopes here, only superstition. Bad air, bad behavior, bad luck. Sometimes, to cleanse the village, a stray cat might be drowned, or a suspected witch blamed. Anything to explain the unexplainable. You suddenly remember your own symptoms from earlier this week, the headache, the fatigue. What if it wasn't just overwork? What if you'd been bitten? Your stomach tightens. You inspect your arm again, heart racing. Historians note that even nobles, despite their wealth, couldn't avoid infection. The fleas didn't care who you were. One quirky medieval attempt at prevention pomanders. Little scented balls often worn around the neck or held in the hand stuffed with herbs and spices. People believed the pleasant smells would ward off bad air and with it disease. You make a mental note to craft one out of lavender and rosemary tomorrow, anything for peace of mind, even if it's based on pre-germ logic. That night, your sleep is shallow and restless. Every itch becomes suspicious. Every creak makes you flinch. You dream of black boils and coughing fits of rats with glowing eyes and fleas with fangs. When morning comes, you feel no relief, just exhaustion, and yet you rise. Because what else can you do? Medieval villagers lived daily with the specter of pestilence. They buried their loved ones quickly, often in mass graves. They feared cities where the disease moved fastest. They relied on prayer charms and a dangerous mix of hope and helplessness. And you, now part of their world, understand that on a level you never wanted to. You gather your things and step outside, blinking into the daylight. Life goes on. Chickens still squawk. Children still play. Somewhere bread bakes. The rats too go about their business. And the fleas, they're still here. Always. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where pestilence isn't an exception. It's a neighbor. After surviving a night of phantom flea bites and the ever-present anxiety of medieval illness, you stagger into the new day, hoping to find at least one moment of joy, something uplifting, perhaps even fun. And to your cautious relief, today is a feast day, which means no work, no weeding, and best of all, entertainment. But let's be clear, medieval entertainment is a different beast entirely. It ranges from the charming to the bizarre, from the surprisingly wholesome to the violently chaotic. There's music, dancing, storytelling, puppet shows, and if you're feeling brave, bear baiting, and public hangings, it's a buffet of amusements, and you're expected to enjoy them all, even when your modern sensibilities would rather look away. The day starts with the sound of drums, not sleek snare drums or shiny marching bands, but rough-beaten animal skins strapped over wooden frames. A group of traveling minstrels has arrived, their instruments slung over their backs, their songs ready to liven up the village square. They've come to sing ballads of knights and saints, kings and fools, battles and heartbreaks. Some are original, most are recycled tales passed down from village to village, with the details warped and twisted like a game of historical telephone. You lean against a timber post and listen. The music is raw but rhythmic. A lute twangs a pipe trills, and the voice of the lead minstrel rises above the din. O brave Sir Cedric, proud and bold, who fought a bear in armor gold. You raise an eyebrow. That can't be right. But no one seems to mind. Entertainment here isn't about accuracy, it's about distraction, about relief from the aches, the hunger, the grief. So you let yourself be pulled into the story, nodding along with the exaggerated chorus and watching children dance barefoot in the dirt. Nearby, another form of entertainment draws a crowd, the juggler. He's balancing wooden pins and apples, occasionally tossing in a sharp knife to raise the stakes. The villagers gasp and clap. One child shrieks with laughter. The juggler winks at the crowd and calls for a volunteer. You wisely step back. Then comes a puppet show. A makeshift stage is built from crates and cloth, and a hand emerges wearing a crude puppet with a painted-on sneer. The show begins. It's loud slapstick and full of exaggerated gestures. The puppets argue, fight, and fall over with delightful drama. The kids love it. The adults chuckle knowingly. There's even a joke about a bishop's bum that earns a scandalized roar from the crowd. But not all entertainment is so innocent. At the edge of the square, a bear is being led into a crude pen. It's chained, its fur matted. The villagers gather coins, exchanged bets, whispered. Bear baiting, a medieval sport, involves setting trained dogs against a restrained bear. You try to look away, but the atmosphere is magnetic, violent, cruel, and deeply normalized. The dogs are released. The bear snarls, swipes. The crowd cheers. You feel a knot in your stomach. This is fun, for them it is. For you, it's a reminder of how different their world is. Pain and spectacle are inseparable here. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly desensitized to violence or simply shaped by their brutal surroundings. You're starting to suspect it's both. You retreat to the quieter side of the square, where a storyteller has gathered a semicircle of listeners. He tells tales of saints performing miracles, of monsters defeated by clever peasants, of talking foxes and cursed toads. His voice is soft, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You catch yourself swaying, slightly lulled by the cadence. This is the kind of entertainment you hoped for: simple, imaginative, oddly soothing. Later, a group of villagers joins in a dance. There's no DJ, no bass drop, no choreography, just stomping feet, spinning skirts, clapping hands. The circle widens, and somehow you're pulled in. You stumble a bit. Your tunic gets stepped on. You laugh a real full laugh for the first time in days. It's clumsy, it's chaotic, but it's fun. And for a brief moment, you forget the fleas, the plague, the porridge. You just dance. One quirky detail you pick up during the festivities today's feast day is in honor of Saint Gerbold, patron saint of mildew and accidental monks. Apparently, he once cured a village's grain supply by sneezing on it. Historians remain unsure if he existed, but the locals don't care. They're here to feast, drink, and forget the week's miseries. Speaking of feasting tonight, You eat better than you have all week. A roasted pig turns slowly over a fire. Trenchers of stew are passed around. There's hard cheese pears, dried plums, and even something sweet honey cakes made from barley flour. You devour your portion grateful beyond words. Feasts are rare, but when they happen, villagers go all in. No one diets in the Middle Ages, not by choice anyway. There's ale, of course, stronger than usual, and mead if someone's been saving it. You sip carefully. Around you, villagers grow louder, red-cheeked, and relaxed. Old songs rise up. A woman plays a fiddle. Someone shouts a riddle and gets a turnip thrown at their head. Laughter echoes across the square, and then the fire is lit. The bonfire rises high, casting long, flickering shadows across the earth. It's meant to drive out spirits, to honor the saint, to mark the turning of the seasons. People dance around it, toss herbs into the flames, and whisper wishes. The air is thick with wood smoke and something else relief maybe, or unity. For one night, everyone is fed, everyone is warm, everyone is human. You sit back tired but content. Entertainment in the Middle Ages isn't perfect. It's often brutal, occasionally absurd, but when it's good, it's good. It reminds you that even in an age of hardship, people still found ways to laugh, sing, and celebrate. Tomorrow it's back to work, back to rats and ropes and porridge. But tonight, you belong. The feast lingers in your stomach, and the echo of laughter still hums in your ears as dawn breaks on another medieval day. But today holds a new kind of challenge, not a trial by fire or fleas or porridge, but a far more frustrating endeavor getting from one place to another. Because in the Middle Ages, travel isn't something you do for fun. It's something you do out of necessity, and often with great reluctance. Let's begin with the basics. You need to get to the next village over to deliver a message. Just one village, a few miles. Easy, right? Nope. First, obstacle roads, or more accurately, the absence of them. Medieval roads are usually nothing more than dirt paths worn into the ground by the feet of peasants' hooves of animals and the rickety wheels of carts. If you're near a major city or along a Roman legacy route, you might find actual stonework, uneven, cracked, and overgrown, but something. If not, expect a bumpy, muddy, root-tangled journey filled with potholes deep enough to swallow a small child. You step carefully into the track leading out of town. It rained last night, of course. The ground is now a soup of slippery mud and puddles. You slide, you stumble, you curse quietly to yourself, because cursing too loudly might attract attention. And attention on the road is rarely good. You're not walking alone. Other villagers pass you with carts, baskets, and livestock in tow. A woman hauls a sack of grain, almost her own size. A boy chases a pig that escaped his rope. Travel, you learn quickly, is communal, but not coordinated. It's chaotic, muddy, and deeply inefficient. And don't even think about traveling by wagon unless you're hauling something heavy. Medieval carts have no suspension wooden wheels with metal rims and are designed to punish your spine at every bump. You've never appreciated rubber tires more. Still, you trudge on. A small footbridge takes you over a stream, narrow, rotting, and missing a plank. You leap, barely clearing it, feeling the sharp sting of cold water splash up your legs. You wonder briefly if medieval villagers carried spare socks. They didn't. They just dealt with wet feet all day. The sun climbs slowly. You pass hedgerows, fields, and the occasional wayfarer eyes downcast cloak pulled tight. People don't smile much on the road, not because they're unfriendly, but because they're wary. Bandits are a very real concern. Yes, bandits. Travelers are vulnerable, especially those who walk alone. You're not carrying anything of value unless someone's really desperate for a half-eaten cheese round and a copper spoon, but that doesn't mean you're safe. Medieval justice doesn't patrol the roads. The woods are thick and the laws are thin. You glance nervously at the tree line. Every snap of a twig sets your heart racing. But the only creature that emerges is a stray goat. You let out a shaky laugh and keep walking a little faster now. One quirky solution medieval people used to protect themselves on the road: charms and talismans. Many travelers wore amulets, tiny cloth pouches with bits of scripture herbs or bones to ward off danger. You consider fashioning one from your belt, stuffing it with lavender and hopeful thoughts. Historians still debate whether these charms worked, but psychologically they made a big difference. Confidence counts when you're alone in the woods. After hours of careful walking, you reach a waymarker, a tall wooden post carved with rough symbols. It's a crossroads, and if you squint, you can see another village in the distance. Relief washes over you. You're nearly there. But of course, there's a toll. A gruff man in a dented helmet stands beside a crude gate across the road. He claims to be a servant of Lord Dunstable, who may or may not exist, and demands a road fee. You try to protest. You're just passing through. You're not even on horseback. But he grunts and slaps the gate with a stick. You hand over the 1 silver penny you had tucked away for emergencies. He nods and waves you through, and just like that, you've paid your first medieval bribe. Toll roads, historians note, were often unofficial. Local lords or men claiming to serve them set up booths and demanded payment. Travelers had little choice. Finally, feet sore and clothes dust-streaked, you arrive at the next village. You deliver your message, something mundane about oats if you're honest, and collapse onto a wooden bench outside the alehouse. The trip was just a few miles, but it's taken most of the day. Medieval travel is slow, exhausting, and unpredictable. No Uber, no GPS, no maps beyond rough mental sketches or the occasional spoken direction like turn left at the large stone that looks like a sheep. But still, there's a strange piece to it. On foot, you see everything: the shape of the land, the faces of strangers, the shifting sky. You smell wildflowers, manure, fresh-bred wood smoke. The pace is maddeningly slow, but it's grounded, real. As you sip weak ale and stretch your aching legs, you think about modern travel, zipping along highways, flights across continents, trains with Wi-Fi. And you realize something: speed is wonderful, but it often comes at the cost of awareness. Here in the Middle Ages, travel is an ordeal, but it's also a meditation. You arrive not just at a destination, but through it. Still, you're dreading the walk back. You wake the next morning, legs stiff, boots crusted with dried mud, stomach growling faintly again. It's becoming a pattern. But before your brain can mourn the lack of coffee, a distant horn blasts. Shouts follow. Your neighbor bursts into the lane, shouting a single word, with enough force to knock the sleep from your body entirely. Raid. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where peace is fragile and warfare isn't a rumor, it's a regular visitor. And today it's come calling at your front door. The village erupts into chaos. Chickens scatter. Children are herded into homes. You stand stunned, half-dressed, clutching your belt, as if it might somehow ward off an arrow. The horn blares again. A boy on horseback gallops through, confirming the worst raiders, armed and fast, were spotted not 5 miles off. They'll be here before midday. Your village, like many others, has no real defense, no walls, no moat, just wooden fences and terrified peasants with pitchforks. There might be a local lord somewhere with a small garrison of underpaid men-at-arms, but they're not here. And even if they were, their presence might attract more trouble than it deflects. So what do villagers do when faced with war? They hide. You grab a small sack of food and stumble toward the woods behind the village, part of a ragged procession of neighbors fleeing with whatever they can carry. A mother clutches a baby. A man drags a goat. Someone hauls an entire chicken coop. You keep looking back, expecting to see smoke or worse. Historians often argue whether medieval villages truly saw frequent attacks, or whether the fear of raids was more common than the reality. But here today, there's no debate. This is happening, and it's terrifying. The forest is dense and dark branches snapping under hurried feet. Somewhere nearby, a child cries. You push forward. No one speaks. Everyone listens for hoofbeats. Once hidden, people whisper prayers, not for victory, for survival. Because medieval warfare isn't about strategy or clean lines, it's about property, loot, intimidation. Raiders don't want to conquer, they want to take, and take they do. By late afternoon, smoke curls upward over the trees. You watch in silence, heart heavy, as your village is plundered. Roofs burn, screams carry faintly through the wind, horses stamp. You grip the tree beside you tightly, tears hot in your eyes, not just for the violence, but for the sheer helplessness of it. You want to fight? Of course you do. But with what your spade, your biting sarcasm, medieval villagers had no weapons training, no standing militia. Warfare was reserved for knights and nobles. Peasants existed to endure. And when the raiders leave as quickly as they came, you return to a blackened husk of your home. Smoke clings to everything. Your neighbor's barn is gone. The alehouse is a skeleton of charred beams. The chicken coop, ironically, is somehow still standing, though the chickens are long gone. The village begins to rebuild. Because what else is there to do? People salvage what they can. A boy finds his wooden bowl cracked but usable. A woman unearths her iron cooking pot, now misshapen but intact. Someone pulls a scorched loaf of bread from the ashes still warm. Medieval warfare rarely offered closure. There were no treaties for peasants, no peace negotiations, just destruction followed by silence. You hear tales in the following days. The attackers were rival villagers, perhaps mercenaries hired by a feuding baron, or maybe just desperate men with weapons. Their identity matters less than their impact. They came, they burned, they vanished. And now you patch your roof with straw, as though normalcy is something you can stitch back together with your bare hands. A week later, a group of soldiers passes through. Too late to help, but not too late to demand supplies. They're defending the realm, they say. You offer them your last onion. They grunt. One of them takes your cloak too. You don't argue. It's hard to say who's friend or foe anymore. One fringe belief you overhear from an older villager: the attack was divine punishment for dancing too long on the last feast day, or for allowing that strange woman to brew healing teas. Superstition rises quickly in the aftermath of violence. When you can't explain something, you blame what you fear. But not all reactions are irrational. Some villagers speak of building a watchtower. Others suggest digging a trench, gathering weapons, training the young men. Hope flickers, but so does fear, because everyone knows another raid could come next week, or never. That's medieval warfare in a nutshell, unpredictable, fast, and devastating. One quirky historical detail: during prolonged conflicts, villagers often created fake villages, empty huts on roadsides designed to lure raiders, while the real inhabitants fled to the forest. A clever tactic if you had the time and resources to build decoys. Your village didn't, but maybe next time, and there will be a next time, because medieval Europe is a patchwork of petty kingdoms, feuding lords, and unresolved grudges. Borders are fluid. Allegiances shift like sand, and caught in the middle are people like you, peasants, farmers, blacksmiths, weavers, just trying to live. That night, as you lie beside the smoldering remains of your hearth, wrapped in a borrowed cloak, and listening to the distant cries of an owl, you realize something deep and ancient. Peace in the Middle Ages isn't a rite. It's a pause. The air is thick with ash and uncertainty. As days pass, and slowly the village finds its rhythm again. The fields are cleared, fences, rebuilt roofs, patched badly but patched. But now comes the cruelest test of all nightfall. In the Middle Ages, the night isn't just dark, it's oppressive, absolute. You modern creature of LED lights and 24-hour brightness are wholly unprepared for just how total medieval darkness can be. As the sun dips behind the horizon, villagers rush to finish chores. There are no street lamps to guide late strolls, no electric bulbs to soften the corners of shadow. Once night comes, you're at the mercy of the moon, the stars, and the flickering flame of a sputtering tallow candle. You light yours carefully, shielding it with your hand. The smell hits you first, not beeswax, which is a luxury reserved for churches and nobles, but animal fat. Tallow candles are cheap, but they reek faintly of decay. The flame dances weakly, casting distorted shadows that lurch like restless spirits across your walls. And those walls, they're no comfort, because medieval people fear the dark, not metaphorically, literally. The night is when things go wrong. It's when people vanish, when animals scream from the forest, when illness worsens and madness creeps in, when devils walk. At least that's what people believe. You sit on your straw-stuffed mattress listening. No ambient noise, no humming fridge, no cars in the distance. Just the creak of old beams, the occasional whimper of a dog, and the wind slipping through the thatch. Then a knock. Your heart nearly stops. It's a soft knock, tentative, but in the dark, every sound is amplified. You open the door slowly to find a child holding her doll, wide-eyed. "I think something's outside," she whispers. You both listen, nothing. Or maybe something. A soft rustle, a snap, a breath. You close the door, gently bolt it, and sit back down now, fully aware of why people never let their fires go out. In medieval homes, the hearth is more than heat. It's protection, light, sanity. One of the oddest and yet most enduring medieval superstitions is the belief in night spirits, restless souls, fairies, witches, demons. Some say if you forget to turn your shoes upside down before bed, evil spirits might walk in them at night. Others keep a broom by the door not to sweep, but to confuse unwanted visitors who must count the bristles before entering. You chuckle at the absurdity and then quietly place your own shoes upside down, just in case. There's also the issue of curfew, not the modern teenager's nightmare, but an actual law. Derived from the old French couvre-feu, it means cover the fire. When the bell rings at sunset, villagers are expected to cover their hearths and extinguish all open flames. It's meant to prevent house fires, which in wooden villages are a genuine catastrophe. But it also means the night belongs fully to the dark. Some folks ignore curfew, of course. Rebels, lovers, thieves. That's where the real fun or danger begins. You overhear stories of a man who left his home after dark to retrieve a lost goat, only to return without his hair and memory swearing he'd seen a demon with a pig's head. Of a woman found sleeping in the churchyard convinced she'd been dancing all night in the woods with fae folk. Are they true? Probably not. But you're not about to find out. Tonight you do what medieval people have done for centuries. You try to sleep through it. You curl beneath your scratchy blanket, the candle guttering beside you, the fire mere embers. You listen, eyes wide, senses sharp. At some point, you hear singing, far off, high-pitched, a child, a spirit, or just your imagination. You cover your ears. Whatever it is, it belongs to the night. Sleep in the Middle Ages is fragmented. People rarely sleep 8 hours straight. They sleep in 2 shifts first, sleep followed by a waking period, an hour or so to pray, think maybe talk quietly, then second sleep. Historians now believe this segmented sleep pattern was perfectly normal. You experience it now firsthand. You fall asleep eventually, the sounds of wind and your heartbeat mingling. Then you wake suddenly. No idea how long you've slept. The candle has died. The fire is a black smudge. Everything is pitch. You can't see your own hands. You sit there in the silence of the night watch, feeling time stretch like cooling wax. It's the loneliest part of the day. You whisper a prayer. You don't even believe in medieval theology, but it doesn't matter. The dark demands ritual. You light a new candle with shaking fingers and breathe easier as the flame rises. It's easy in moments like this to understand why so much medieval superstition was born. In this level of darkness, the imagination becomes a tyrant. Every creak is a ghost, every gust of wind a whisper, every silence a judgment. Eventually you return to sleep, if only because there's nothing else to do. You've survived the night, just barely. Tomorrow brings light noise routine and the illusion of control. But tonight was the true Middle Ages. And in this time, the dark always wins. The night finally surrenders to a dull, gray dawn. You stretch stiffly grateful that nothing dragged you into the woods, nothing whispered your name from beneath the bed, and miraculously you still have both your shoes. But as daylight grows, so does your next problem today, is market day, which means it's time to haul haggle and navigate the medieval version of Walmart, only with fewer rules and significantly more livestock. Market days are the lifeblood of medieval life. They don't happen every day, maybe once a week, or even less often depending on your location. When they do, the entire region descends on a nearby town to sell by-trade gossip and show off. It's not just an economic event. It's social, it's cultural, it's chaos. Your job this morning is simple. bring a basket of eggs and a small sack of barley to the market to 2 villages over and trade for salt a whetstone, and if the prices aren't outrageous, a strip of smoked meat. Seems straightforward enough, except nothing in the Middle Ages is ever straightforward. You begin your journey early. Your arms ache from yesterday's firewood chopping. Your boots are still damp, but the cart is loaded wobbly wheel and all, and you trudge along with other villagers, each dragging sacks, pulling goats, or balancing baskets atop heads. It's like a parade, but slower, smellier, and less festive. Upon arriving at the town gate, you're immediately greeted by a toll collector, another one. A silver penny is the price of admission. You don't even argue anymore. Just hand it over with a sigh. At least this one doesn't take your cloak. Inside the market, it's a sensory overload. The smells hit you first, fish fresh, and very much not fresh, mingling with the tang of sheep dung, warm bread, tallow smoke, and spices you can't quite name. The sounds come next. Shouting traders, bleating animals, the clatter of hooves and wheels on cobblestone, a lute player desperately trying to be heard over a pig squealing nearby. The layout isn't organized. There are no stalls with neat labels or tidy aisles. It's a sprawl of tables, crates, blankets on the ground, each run by someone barking their prices with the urgency of someone who hasn't eaten in 2 days. You wander through it all, clutching your modest goods like their treasure. You approach the salt vendor, a wiry man with no eyebrows and suspiciously few teeth. He eyes your eggs, picks one up, sniffs it, shakes it like it might rattle. He offers you half the salt you expected. You counter. He scoffs. You start to walk away, and suddenly the deal is back on, plus a pinch extra if you'll throw in the woven basket. Done. Next is the whetstone. You locate a blacksmith's apprentice with grime-streaked cheeks and a surprisingly gentle voice. You trade your barley, and he tosses in a second-hand iron nail for luck. You're not sure what you'll use it for, but you're weirdly grateful. Now the meat. You eye the butcher's stall, a plank balanced across 2 barrels, where fat links of sausage hang beside strips of jerky. Everything is grayish-brown. The flies are enthusiastic. You point to a small slab of smoked pork, your final coin in hand. He weighs it. You wince. It's just barely affordable, but just as he wraps it in a scrap of cloth, another hand darts in and snatches it. A boy. He runs meat in hand, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. The butcher howls and leaps over his stall, knocking over a basket of onions. The chase is on. You stand frozen, your empty hand still outstretched. This is not uncommon. Medieval markets are rife with pickpockets, tricksters, and opportunists. In fact, entire market codes existed to regulate who could sell, what, where, and how, but enforcement was inconsistent. Town criers might announce the rules, but unless a constable catches someone red-handed, theft is just another cost of doing business. You sigh and decide bread will have to do for tonight. You buy a small round loaf, still warm, and it's the best decision you've made all day. Then there's the entertainment. A traveling fire eater draws a crowd. A monkey on a leash performs tricks. A healer sells a potion that will supposedly cure gout boils, infertility, and possibly bad luck. You suspect it's mostly honey and wine. People still line up. In the corner of the square, a man is preaching fire and brimstone to anyone who'll listen. Repent. The end is nigh, he bellows, eyes wide. No one really argues. With plague, famine, and war all too real, the end always feels nigh. You overhear bits of gossip too. A miller's daughter ran off with a baker's apprentice. A knight was seen weeping in the chapel. Someone swears they saw a dragon, or maybe just a very angry swan. One quirky tradition: some medieval markets employ a crier of weights. His job publicly shaming vendors who cheat on measurements. If caught, they're tied to a chair and spun around while people throw vegetable peels. It's oddly satisfying. Finally, your basket lighter and your coin purse empty, you prepare to leave. But not before you pass a scribe, offering to write your name beautifully for a price. He uses black ink and a feather quill. You hesitate. What would you even do with your name on a scrap of parchment? Then again, maybe that's the point. You pay him a farthing. He asks for your name. You tell him. He writes it, adds a curlicue at the end, and hands it over like it's a gift. You stare at it. It's the first time you've seen your name written. You feel oddly moved. As you walk back toward the village, the parchment tucked carefully into your pouch, the smells of the market still clinging to your clothes, you reflect on the whirlwind you just survived. It was loud. It was filthy. It was glorious. And just like everything in the Middle Ages, it was absolutely exhausting. You return to your village, footsore, a little poorer, but oddly satisfied. Your meager trade, salt whetstone bread, and one beautifully scribbled name, feels like treasure. But even as you settle back into your smoky, straw-filled home, a familiar truth settles in your chest like a stone. You've barely made it through another day. And you're starting to realize that here in the Middle Ages, that alone is a miracle. Because the final unavoidable fact about this world is simple: you probably wouldn't last. Not just because of disease or poor hygiene, or the nightly terror of pitch-black nothingness, but because every single part of medieval life is a relentless test of endurance, a challenge to your body, your beliefs, your sense of self. And unlike your own world, where safety nets cushion mistakes here, you don't get second chances. You adapt, or you perish. You think back on everything you've endured: the blistering labor, the sour ale breakfasts, the leeches, the bloodletting, the parasites, the bandits, the pitchfork diplomacy. And most of all, the constant grinding uncertainty. There's no retirement plan, no health care, no weather forecast, not even a reliable calendar unless the priest says so. The only thing you can count on is today, and even that, only maybe. And yet people do survive here, even thrive in a way. You've seen it in the quiet pride of the blacksmith hammering out tools without complaint, in the weary grin of the weaver who rethreads the loom for the 100th time, in the mother who sings softly to her child by firelight, ignoring the creaks in the ceiling and the cough in her chest. You've seen it in the dance around the feast fire, in the flicker of joy over a fresh loaf of bread, in the crumpled scrap of parchment, with your name scribbled like a prayer. It's not that medieval people were somehow tougher than you. They were terrified, exhausted, often sick. But they endured anyway because they had to. Resilience wasn't a virtue. It was a daily requirement. And over time, it etched itself into every part of their lives, in the songs, in the superstitions, in the calloused hands and tightly stitched tunics. You probably wouldn't survive this world for long, not with your sensitive teeth your fragile digestion, your expectations of convenience and fairness. But the people who did survive, they weren't just lucky, they were astonishing. Still, even they had limits. One brutal winter, one bad harvest, one infected cut, and that could be it. There's no buffer, no cushion. One misstep, and your entire story could be reduced to a name in a church ledger, or not recorded at all. And what about joy? It's here scattered like breadcrumbs, a warm hearth, a shared joke, a market dance, a blessing muttered over seeds in spring. But joy is never guaranteed. It's stolen in moments, not served in abundance. And maybe that's what makes it so potent and so necessary. In a world this hard, even a sliver of joy can carry you for days. As the fire crackles low and the village settles under another cloak of darkness, you curl into your straw bed, itchy but warm. You survived. Just one day. That's all it was. But here, that's enough. You close your eyes, heartful body, broken mind humbled. And as your breathing slows, you feel it, the weight of history pressing gently against your back. The whisper of thousands before you who lived, loved, labored, and laughed in this world so very unlike your own. And tomorrow you'll rise again, if you can. The embers glow faintly, their orange light barely reaching the edge of your room. The sounds of the village have hushed. No more chickens, no more shouting, just the quiet crackle of the hearth and the slow rhythm of your breath. You made it. You lived a full day in a world that was never meant for comfort. Now let it go. Let the scratchy tunic fall away. Let the aching muscles soften. Let the sounds of the medieval world dissolve like fog in morning sun. The plague won't follow you here. The dark can't touch you now. Inhale slowly. Feel your chest rise. Exhale even slower. Let it all release. You're safe. You're warm. And you're back where you belong. As you drift, think of the hands that built those wooden beams, the feet that wore those misshapen shoes, the voices that once echoed through those thatched halls. They're all long gone now, but for one gentle night you remembered them. History isn't just kings and battles. It's 1,000 quiet stories, lived in dirt and firelight and silence. And tonight yours became one of them. So sleep now, traveler. The Middle Ages can wait. Let the past go. You've earned your rest.